Okay, Aurora, thank you so much for being here and taking time to be on our podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Let's just dive right in. Let's give the listeners an idea here. What got you into recruiting to start off?
It's actually kind of a really funny story. I was in sales before I started getting into recruiting, and I loved like interacting with people, and I still do, obviously, but um, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to keep selling insurance. I didn't really want to do outside sales. So I took this personality test, and it's one of those silly, like web-based personality tests. And it was like, you should try recruiting. You have a sales background, you love talking to people. So I just started applying for some recruiting jobs, and I got connected with my now boss in Huntsville, and it's kind of been great ever since. I got to learn a whole new industry, both from the recruiting side and from the EMS side.
Cool. I've never heard that answer. Actually, I don't know if you agree. This is totally off topic, and we won't have to go too long on this, but whenever I took those tests, I always took them with the thought of what I wanted my answer to be. Did you ever struggle with that? Where I was told I should
Oh
be a
yeah.
doctor growing up, and that's what everybody told me. And so I was always answering like, I want to help people. I want to be out and about in the hospitals. I love hospitals. When in all reality, I don't love being in hospitals. But that's how I'd always answer because I was like, oh yeah, that helps. But did you feel that when you were doing it, or was it a pretty good test to it sounds like it was good.
I mean, it kind of worked for me. I mean, I knew that there were parts of sales that I've always loved, and there were parts that I knew that I wouldn't really love no matter what kind of physical object I was like selling in a sense or service or anything like that. So I tried to go in it super open-minded and it seemed to work for me. I love it.
Awesome. Well, congrats. That's awesome. Totally
Thanks.
different viewpoint than we've had before. So I love that. And let's give the future listeners an idea. Who's your typical client and your typical candidate for you and your organization?
Everything our organization does as FPC of Huntsville is electronics contract manufacturing.
Hmm.
Um, So you can kind of make it a little bit more broad and call it electronics manufacturing services or EMS, because we have some clients that don't all do the same thing. But essentially, contract manufacturers are what we do, are the companies that build like printed circuit boards, and they'll typically take that printed circuit board and build it out into something else. It could be a wire harness assembly, it could be a full box build, or like a full product going out the door. But the main focus are the companies that have like surface mount technology lines and are populating the components onto a printed circuit board.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. And then who's your typical candidate? What type of candidates do you typically find yourself placing? And it can be across the board too. You don't have to have a specific answer there.
I personally specialize in working with customer facing personnel. So I work a lot of sales and business development, account management, program management. And then I've gotten into recently a lot of test engineering and design engineering, just
Mhm.
because it's something I'm like personally interested in.
Yeah.
Um, but the majority of the candidates that I work with are on the customer facing side.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. That'll help give the candidates or the listeners an idea here of while we're talking. And let's dive into some of the different trends and different things here. So what types of roles are you currently seeing are most in demand in the EMS world?
Right now, a lot of business development, and I've kind of seen this over the last like 2 years. Towards the end of the year, companies will try to like build out their business development or their sales teams and get ready for
Yep.
the next year. So I think that's what a lot of our clients are doing right now. Um, Kind of as the year goes on, that's different. I see a lot in the middle of the year. It might be a little bit more program management. Um, but there's always, people that are leaving a job or kind of different circumstances where there's always some type of position open in kind of every role. Um, there's always engineering positions open in EMS. Um, but definitely on the customer side, I would say business development right now.
Okay. Okay. And is that just to make sure I understand is and this doesn't have to always be the rule here, but you're saying it's a lot of times it can be common towards the end of the year for business development to be kind of an uptick to start the new year strong. Is that what
That's
you're seeing?
what
Yeah.
I'm seeing. But I
Yeah.
mean, this is based on like less than 3 years of me kind of really watching the trends.
Yeah.
Um, but over the last couple years, it's been pretty consistent that at the end of the year, companies are always looking for more business development personnel than they have been like in the middle of the year in the summer.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And I'm not going to hold
Mhm.
you to that. None of the listeners will either. But it's interesting to see kind of the trends that you are seeing right now, even if it's for the last
Mhm.
3 years. Um, let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
What mistakes do you often see executives make when they're trying to transition or apply to new roles in the industry?
I would say I talk to a lot of very senior level, and I mean like C-suite, VP level, director level personnel that want to tell companies that they can solve every problem and explain how they can solve problem A through problem Z, when really like a client might need them to focus on one specific area, rather than all areas. Like they might have somebody in operations currently that is overseeing like their engineering team and they really need help fixing a specific process or focusing on the supply chain side of things or something like that. So I think it's really important for executives to first understand like what a client is looking for or
Mm,
like where the client's challenges are, and then tailoring their responses to kind of fit the needs of the client. So they're a little bit more concise rather than kind of extended answers that are a little bit more broad.
yeah. So no, kind of avoiding the blanket answers, I guess, that
Yeah,
cover
definitely.
everything. It's interesting. It's like that saying, I probably say this a lot on the podcast, but the jack of all trades is the master of none. Even if they're great at it. I said that to somebody I was talking to. They were going to work with us, and I said that, and they're like, "No, but I am. I really am.
Yeah.
I know it all." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great, but I don't think anybody's going to believe you, right? Even
Mhm.
if you are or they are, they just need the specific focus." So that's interesting to see. So that's a pretty common mistake you're seeing. Is overconfidence also? I'm seeing that as a trend right now. Is that kind of lined up with overconfidence, do you think?
I would say kind of. I wouldn't say I run into overconfidence like too much. It's almost like overselling.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
because you can see like when somebody looks at your resume, they can see the positions that you've held. And
Mhm.
there are some generic responsibilities that a director of operations is going to have, no matter the size of the company or the type of company that you're working at. Um,
Mhm.
but I guess I would just say like kind of overselling. Like you don't have to be good at everything. And I guess it kind of goes back to the conversation we just had. But no, I would say that's probably another one.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting because um, I feel like those feel correlated, but they are very different. And so I'm happy that you distinguish that because overselling, if you don't know the company and their needs and you're just trying to say you can do anything, it might just be a huge turnoff. And I think it's good for people to realize that and have a really structured approach. So I appreciate you saying that. And I'm curious, what advice would you give executives trying to make themselves more visible to recruiters like yourself?
I would say from a visibility standpoint, just networking. I know
Yeah.
everybody says networking, but
Yeah.
that's really important. Not only networking with people that you used to work with, people that you want to work with, recruiters, um, and other people that talk to recruiters, like especially in customer facing positions, business development specifically. I will
Mhm.
talk to somebody and they'll say, I'm not interested, but I have a friend that just mentioned that they're going to start looking for something next year. Do you want me to connect you with them? Oh, yeah, of course. That's awesome.
Mm.
So even just connecting with like friends and anybody you know in the same space, and
Yeah.
just kind of putting some feelers out there, anywhere you can put out connections, that's super helpful.
Mm.
Um, in regard to like LinkedIn or like making yourself available on LinkedIn, that's a little bit harder, especially if
Yeah.
you're currently employed. Um, but I read through everybody's LinkedIn page that I see. So if you have it like in your about information or maybe in your bio or something, I'm gonna look at that too. I'm not only looking for like the big open to work circle.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's what I'd say.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect because I think networking is it's sometimes it is a common answer sometimes, but the the interesting thing with networking is I like what you said about people that also work with recruiters, not just your own network, but all of them, because there's other connections that come, and that's the beauty of networking, which I think a lot of people forget that other people will know people, right? And so kind of just talking and keeping branching out I feel like I see, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, or did you have something you were going to say? Were you going to add something to that?
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say also like when it comes to networking, a lot of people see as networking as just like touching as many people as you can, but
Hmm.
it's also really important to stay in touch. Like stay in contact with your recruiters like once a quarter or like once every 6 months or something, whether
Yeah.
you're looking or not. Like I have some candidates that'll reach out to me like every 3 months and just say, "Hey, just wanted to check in. How's it going? How's your
Yeah.
dogs?" Just something kind of
Yeah.
silly, and we can kind of go from there and just have a normal conversation. It doesn't have to be anything serious.
Yeah. I feel like I see those people are the ones that are landing positions faster. And I mean that's
Definitely.
the point, but also it's just it feels less forced. I mean if they're reaching out to you and just touching base with you, and then when they come back, whether they were reaching out just because they just do that with everybody, or they're just trying to keep a good schedule on reaching out to people, it comes off more natural and genuine, which I really like. It's hard to do. I mean, it's hard to remember to do. It's really not that difficult, to reach out. And I think about that all the time, like, oh, I should reach out to so and so, but I don't. And a lot of people just push it off for like a decade, and then you probably see
Yeah.
it all the time, and they haven't networked, and then they're like, I'm done for. I haven't talked to anybody. So I think that's really good advice. For
Yes.
people to keep in mind. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And it's really helpful too when you like stay in touch with people more regularly, because then you kind of get a feel for who they are as a person. And that can be really helpful when you're recruiting for something because obviously we have numerous different clients. Some are large organizations, some are super small organizations. And if I know you're looking specifically for a VP level role at a $10 million organization, those
yeah,
are very, very, very hard to find. So
yeah,
if we stay connected, then not only are you going to stay top of mind, but I also know your personality and know that would probably mesh really well with this company or not so well with this company.
yeah. Which is hard for, I think a lot of people have like really, I don't know if a myopic viewpoint is the right way to say it, but like they're not focused on the future when they're like unemployed or they know they're about to be laid off or things are uncertain. But a lot of times I have to tell people too, like, hey, making the connections might not lead to something now, but it might turn to something in a year that'll be your absolute ideal role, like what you were talking about. I won't even add any more to that because I 100% agree.
Yeah.
It's like singing music to my ears. I like hearing that. I think it's really awesome. So thank you for saying that. Um,
Mhm.
I'm curious, when you review LinkedIn profiles or resumes, what are a few key things that make you pause and think, hey, I should call this person?
Well, number one, if I see PCBA on the resume,
Okay.
because that's kind of what we do,
Yeah.
and it's a very like niche industry.
Hmm.
Once you start talking to people, I feel like everybody knows everybody. I will call somebody in Maryland and they will know the person that I spoke to an hour ago in California.
Mm,
So,
interesting.
um,
Yeah.
if I see PCBA, they're on my list of people that I want to know.
Yeah.
Um, Outside of that, I would say like longevity.
Mhm.
That's super important. If I see somebody that has been in the same position for like 10 years, then I'll definitely want to talk to them and make sure they're in the same position because they want to be, not because they want to progress their career and it's not maybe happening internally. Um, I just I would say those are kind of the top two things.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about asking you this, but I've heard the average tenure right now for companies, for executives, is like 2 to 3 years. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing a lot of people like 2 to 3 years jumping? Because I'm seeing it on a lot of resumes, but I'm curious on your end if you see that a lot.
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
Kind of a combination. I definitely see some shorter stints, but I would
Yeah.
say when I think of a shorter stint, I think under 5 years. Um, so 3 to 5 is kind of the spot I see more often. Um, if I see under like 3 years, it's typically people that are kind of moving around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's because they're in contract positions or they're doing like a kind of turnaround for an organization that just acquired a new site or something very niche and specific. So not that it's a bad thing, but I feel like I either see like 6 month to 18-month jumps pretty regularly or like longer than 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I would agree. And it's hard because some people are really worried if they have those stints. And it can come off wrong. I know you're mentioning, hey, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it could, right? And so it's kind of
Yeah.
like the nice thing of having some key things in there to make you stand out. So I appreciate that information. Um, Do you have any other thoughts with that? Were you going to say something?
I
If
would say
Fine. Yeah.
if it's a contract position specifically,
Yeah.
I always tell people to write contract in there.
Hmm.
Say it's like a or like a put in your resume like this was an EMS company that I was helping with this specific problem because
Mm,
then obviously at the end most people would assume that you solved the problem. So
right.
that's kind of a great achievement to have on your resume in and of itself. Um, but if you can put like a little, like 2, 3 word, like situational phrase just to kind of explain it, that's
Mm,
super helpful because the first thing that people are going to look at on your resume is what's your name and what's your position and what companies have you worked at and for how long.
yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting because if you think about it, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, but the way that I think about it, I've never done recruiting specifically, so you can correct me, please. The way that I think about it, if they don't have a long stint at a company, say it's a year or 18 months, if you don't know it's contract work, you probably think that they don't have the commitment to finish out the project or the job that they were agreeing to do. Because most people aren't hoping that you're going to only stay for 18 months. But I do like the idea of, putting the contract in there. I mean, we do that with some of our clients too, but so that they actually know, okay, that was completed, job well done. That was the plan all along. So
Mhm.
I'm really happy you said that. I'm happy that we didn't just shift gears completely. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I appreciate it. What's the best way? Because there's a lot of advice you've given, a lot of different viewpoints, different things here. If there's a potential client for you, potential candidate that's listening, what's the best way for them to reach you or your company?
I would say the best way to reach me is I'm always looking on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
or you can just email me, which my email's all over LinkedIn, but it's just my first name at fpchuntsville.com.
Hmm.
Um, and if you're not an EMS, because our office is very, very highly focused on the EMS industry, the FPC franchise, there's like 70 offices across the US, and every office has their own specialization. Some are focused on certain industries, some are focused on different like disciplines. Um, but there's a lot of very niche offices under the FPC name. And then we've got a big national website that you can kind of look through all of the jobs that we have posted, and that sort of stuff.
Cool. That's awesome. So do you actually communicate with, just out of curiosity, do you communicate
Mhm.
with the other franchises often? Like share candidates, share clients, or like bounce off each other ideas, or is that not typical for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, the last candidate that I was working with was kind of a share between one of our other offices,
Mm,
in Michigan, actually.
mm,
So we try to work really closely together. Obviously, there's a lot about recruiting that's kind of you in your own space. And EMS being a super niche industry, there's not really a ton of other companies that are super relatable. There are and there aren't. It just kind of depends on the type of position that you're looking at. But like if you're recruiting for a test engineering position, like somebody that's a test engineer in the CNC world is probably not going to be the best fit for like a microelectronics company that's developing a new semiconductor. So there's not always a ton of overlap. So it just kind of depends on like what types of roles we're recruiting for, and what types of roles other companies have out there.
Aurora, I'm curious, do you have any advice for anybody listening today?
I have some advice specifically on kind of like resumes or
Yeah.
um, people when they're, I guess, kind of introducing themselves to a new company.
Hmm.
And this is probably a little bit more your expertise in the resume side of things.
Yeah, go for
Um,
it.
But I always tell people that they should always include like a little blurb about the company that they work for. Because if somebody's looking at your resume, and maybe this is just a me thing, but when I'm looking at somebody's resume, when I'm used to looking at LinkedIn profiles all day long. If there's a company I'm not familiar with, I'll go click on that company on their LinkedIn page. But if
Hmm.
there's a familiar I'm not or a company I'm not familiar with on their resume, then I'm probably going to click their LinkedIn page and then I'm going to go look at that company. And then I just get a super high level overview about the company where if somebody will take like a sentence, maybe two max, and just
Hmm.
say, like, this company is a defense manufacturer, but I work specifically in the advanced technology segment that does X, Y, and Z, then I
Yeah.
already have a better understanding of why they would be a good candidate for a role that I'm working, even though I don't know the company from working with them before or coming across them. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's just super important for people that haven't been in the industry for a really long time. And a lot of times, like newer recruiters like myself or like HR personnel and others that just, like I said, aren't super familiar with the industry can help connect the dots.
Yeah. I love that because I think it ties into the idea that not everybody's going to be able to have enough time to look at the resume and then go over because LinkedIn's so convenient. And I agree,
Mhm.
right? If you don't know about the company, if it can be there, then you can sell your story and why you're the right fit a lot faster than assuming that somebody's going to go and take the time to Google the company and see if you're right fit when somebody else might already have that on there. So,
Especially if it's like a like we're a super niche industry. So like I know a lot of companies in our space. So if I don't, it would be really easy to say, oh, I don't know that company. They must not be in EMS.
yeah.
But they could just be a smaller company or, in a very, I'm gonna say remote location that I'm just not
Yeah.
coming across super often and they could still be a really great fit.
Yeah. That's really good advice. Do you want to add anything else to that? I mean, no pressure if you don't want to, but I think that's awesome for our listeners.
No, I think that's something that's just super that when I see that on a resume, I get really excited. I
Yeah.
love it when people will take the time to just do that because I feel like it's kind of helping me, so I'm super appreciative of it.
Yeah.
Um, and they're trying to think about it from the person that's reading the resume because there are a lot of people that are going to see your resume that aren't operations managers in EMS. They could be the director of HR from the CNC world, or, there's just so many people from so many different backgrounds. It's really hard to assume, or it's really hard to get a whole group of people that, know everything that you know. So I just
Yeah.
assume that if it's, not standard knowledge, that it's better to just give a little extra.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And it saves them time and then it does come off more considerate too. And I think that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that advice. I
Yeah, for
appreciate
sure.
it. Aurora, thank you so much for being such an awesome guest. Hopefully we can have you on again. We'd love to do it again sometime. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.